you need to start to know yourself enough of like, hey, this is a challenge for me. I need to do less of this so that I can be more of who I am.
Hello and welcome to the Weaponized Marriage Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Hewitt.
And I'm your host, Kendra Hewitt.
And today we're going to talk about Kendra's Instagram post. So Kendra had something that she read recently on the internet and thought it was worth sharing. And we're going to kind of break it down and discuss because I think it's brings up a good topic.
Okay, cool. So I feel like there's a lot of these going around, but this one really, first of all, the headline really grabbed me. It says, "She's not ugly. She's just tired of your fucking bullshit." And I don't know who wrote this, so I can't give it credit to where credit's due, but I'm just going to roll with it, and then we're going to let it turn into
I'm going to write
conversation.
I'm going to write the guy's version.
Yes. Okay. Sounds good. Let me say something most men don't want to fucking hear. If your woman's lost her spark, if she looks tired all the time, has gained weight, stopped dressing up, walks around like her soul's been evicted, it's not all about menopause. It's not her age. It's not that she's fucking lazy. Sometimes it might be you. Yes, you. Sometimes her body is screaming when she's too afraid or exhausted to say, I don't feel safe. I don't feel chosen. I don't feel seen. You want to know how well a man loves his woman? Look at her. Look at her face, her eyes, her posture. Look at how she walks into a room. Does she radiate? Does she move like she owns it? Or does she shrink? Does she carry heaviness in her hips and her shoulders? Walk around like her nervous system is bracing for impact. Don't lie to yourself. If you treat her like your maid, your therapist, your emotional punching bag, don't be surprised when the light in her eyes starts to disappear. She didn't just, quote, let herself go. She got tired. Tired of being put last. Tired of asking for crumbs. Tired of being touched only when you're horny, not when she's hurting. Tired of carrying your weight and hers, then being called too much when she dares to ask for help. You can't feed a woman neglect and expect her to glow. You can't starve her emotionally and wonder why she's shut down sexually. You can't give her energy to your group chat than more energy to your group chat than your woman and expect her to bloom. Let's be fucking real. You're either pouring love into her or draining the life out of her. You're either nurturing her soul or leaving it to dry out and crack. You're either making her feel chosen or watching her vanish in slow motion. You're either fueling her fire or suffocating it with silence. You're either building a sanctuary in your home or turning her into a ghost inside of it. You don't have to be rich or make more money. You don't have to be a poet. You just have to give a fuck. Put down your pride, put down your phone, put down your excuses, and show the fuck up.
Cut it there.
I'm going to cut it there.
Because it's longer than
Yeah, it is longer than that.
So why did you bring that up? Because clearly you identify with some of that. So what comes up for you when you read that?
Well, I thought about how last week on the reactivity and resentment, I listened to it back this morning. And one of the things that showed up I talked about was just like about feeling safe and seen. And we talked about how like that's what most women are really looking for in their marriage. And then I think that like the tides are turning where men are looking for that too. Like they want to be the same thing. It's not just about sex anymore.
Right.
And this just happened to pop up, and I've been saving a lot of this stuff on my phone for just like kind of content ideas. And I started just kind of read the comments, and I kind of sat with myself and said like what came up for me. And first of all, I was like, well, this doesn't put any of the responsibility in the woman's side. So like I was like,
yeah, but that's the empathy in you. So
the empathetic side of me went right there, right?
Okay, so what's not the empathetic side? What do you relate to?
Also, what I related to is like I was thinking about how like, so if a man reads this post, what does he do about it? Like, what does he change?
Right.
What does he, other than like kind
So
of
maybe
probably a
maybe
visceral
I can
reaction
talk
to it?
about that.
And that's what I wanted to talk about is like, because we talked about one of our topics coming up was like letting your man lead. and we talked a little bit about how we've made that shift, and it's constantly shifting of, like, me letting you lead, because for a long time in our marriage, I would just take charge. I was take charge Charlie in a lot of a lot of ways. Um, but then it was very eye-opening for you to start to see that I actually was fucking sick of being take charge Charlie.
Yeah, because you by nature want to take charge because that's what you've done your whole life, but
Mhm.
on the other hand, you, had to take charge because I wasn't,
Yes, and it also
because you didn't
really
feel
fucked up
safe.
our polarity,
Of course it did.
right?
Yeah, so when you talk about this, you bring this up, so you obviously identified with it, so what parts of it do you identify with? Like, what came up for you when you
Well,
read
like
it?
I said, the first thing that came up for me was, like, just that they wrote out, like, your woman wants to be seen, she wants to be
Mhm,
safe, she wants to be chosen.
m'kay.
And then I went down the rabbit hole of, well, how do you teach a man that? Like,
Mhm,
how do you tell a man,
sure,
"Hey, you're not choosing your wife?" And I feel like it's different for everyone of, like, how do women are gonna feel differently on how they feel chosen.
sure.
Some, it might be like, "Hey, here's my credit card, go buy some shit,"
Mhm.
right? Like, some with that's not mine. Um, and even though that's what I asked for Mother's Day, I was like,
I was
"I
gonna
want a
say,
day
if you
off."
asked me for that.
And I said, like, give me some time and space and some
Some money is
money
to go buy
to go
some.
buy some."
Yeah.
Which, have I ever asked for that?
No, and I was excited that you said that because I was like, "I will definitely do that for him."
Like, and I was like, and I wanted it for a specific reason. I was like, I would like to go buy a couple outfits for our trip to Spain,
Mhm.
right? Which, for me, like I said, I felt even fucking awkward writing that in a text. Like, that felt weird for me. Um,
Why?
Not because I don't have my own money, but because of the fact that I was, like, asking you for, like, very specifically, but to, like, give me money to go buy some things, because I struggle so much with spending that money on myself. Um, so that was a big step for me. So then come back to this, um, it's the little things of, like, I think you're gonna laugh. The line that really stood out from my perspective was, like, "It's not menopause," or whatever, because I feel like we are in that age where a lot of the people that are our age, so you're 45, I'm 43,
Ooh.
like, we're starting to feel those hormonal shifts are starting to happen, right? And I'm not talking about this just because it's also our one of our businesses, right? But I'm having so many conversations with women and men about, like, this age, like, what happens, like, in your late 30s, early
Well,
40s, mid 40s.
why do women let themselves go like that then?
So, but hold on. And I think that, like, menopause becomes this thing that it's like, let's just blame it on menopause.
Mhm, okay.
Like, I'm not sleeping at night, must be I'm in menopause. I'm gaining weight,
Mhm,
must be menopause, all that kind of stuff. It's like, hey, let's really look at the reality. That's where kind of like that line, it's not
okay.
menopause, got me kind of like on this path. Like, I was like, oh, I'm going to keep reading this,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
So, it made me think about, like, how we can justify, like, excuses, and we can make excuses for it, and I was like, that's where I took kinda, like, the responsibility as the woman of, like, being like, "Okay, what's my part in it?" Is like, yeah, do I come home and wanna put my sweatpants on? Yes. Does it agitate me when you say, like, "Oh, I like your sweatpants?" Yes. But, like, back to the last week when it was like, I was really tired, I told you up front, I did put my sweatpants on. It wasn't my sexy sweatpants, and but I could tell, like, there was this moment you looked at me, I came out of the room, and I knew so badly you wanted to be like, "Got your trusty sweatpants on," and but I could see you just choose not to say that,
Okay.
and I was like, "That's even progress, right? For us,
Okay, so
not choosing
again,
the sweatpants."
what does that have to do with it? So this is written from a perspective of a woman, clearly that was, I don't wanna call it victimizing herself by saying like, "My guy doesn't see me, so why would I bother showing up for him?"
But hold
That's
on, this is the cool thing.
Mhm.
You thought that was written by a woman?
That was written by a guy?
It's written by a man
Yeah.
who's selling a book called Getting Beyond Your Bullshit to men.
Right. So this is why I wanna talk about, like, from a guy's perspective, like, when because so there's 2 different reactions from me, right? So reaction number 1 is like, well, that tells the story from one side and it
Mhm,
doesn't tell the story from the other side, right? Because there's always two sides to the story. But from this is clearly written from a like the guy's writing it, and he's writing it because it was likely his experience with his wife, right?
mhm,
Because I think there's a lot of guys that think like, oh, my wife should like show up for me sexually, dress nice for me, pay attention to me, touch me, take care of all the things in the house because I, produce and I show up and work hard, right? So what this is saying is like, hey, it's so much deeper than that. It goes way beyond your responsibilities as, let's say, a provider in your house, right?
mhm,
So, like, what you're saying, like, what it doesn't tell you is what to do, which clearly it's like it's a sales pitch, if he has a
mhm.
book or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
That's why he doesn't say what to do. So, I'm gonna start telling you about like
What
what
to do.
what to do. And if it's that far down the rabbit hole where your wife has put on, 20, 30 pounds, doesn't dress up because she probably doesn't feel good about her body. She probably
Mhm,
doesn't like think that she's attractive to you anymore. Probably tired and like I said, like tired of dealing with your bullshit, like whether it's acting as your mom or your therapist, and maybe she's got too many responsibilities with the kids or with the house. Maybe she's lost her purpose. Uh, it- a lot of those things, right? So in a lot of cases, when your wife or your woman stops feeling seen, yes, it can become a place where it's just like, well, why am I bothering anyway? Like, what am I doing? I'm
mhm.
tired of showing up for him. He's not showing up for me. And the funny thing is, it's like women are not like men. Like a guy would just be like, hey, babe, like start doing this and again, but women won't tell you that, right? You have to almost figure it out yourself cryptically.
Meaning they won't tell you what they need you to start doing.
Yes, they won't tell you like, here's what you need to do in order for you to get what you want.
Mhm.
Which is fucked up, but
That's true.
it's true. So, it depends on the woman, but I think all women want to be seen and they want to be affirmed. So, whether that's affirmed through, like, words of affirmation, whether it's affirmed through, like, "Hey, I see that you've been struggling, working hard. I see you're tired. Like, hey, let me help you. Let me offer to take the kids off your hands for a day. Let me offer to do these projects that have not been being done or whatever. Um, Also, like it talked about, like, hey, the only time you get touched is like when you want to fuck. So offering, affection when you don't feel like it.
Yeah. Well, no, I think it was saying that basically it was saying you only offer affection, meaning the male,
Mm.
when you want to have sex, but actually sometimes women need physical affection when they're actually hurt, like just to be held or like
Yes. So
that's
that's
what
what
they
I mean.
compared it
It's
to.
not only when you want to have sex, not only when you want it to turn into something else.
Mhm.
Like whether it's like a cuddle on the couch, a hug, a foot rub, anything like that, that just makes your woman feel like, hey, I'm paying attention to you. I'm thinking about you.
Mhm.
Right. So just simple things like messages of gratitude, offering to take buy them some time. And some women like gifts, right? So
Yeah.
bringing flowers home, like buying them something nice without them asking. So those are just examples like,
Mhm.
hey, maybe your wife is seen when you buy her things. Maybe your wife is seen when you do things for her. Maybe your wife is seen when you free up time for her. Maybe she's seen when
And
when
maybe
you
it's not your
affirm her.
wife in this example, maybe it is your
Girlfriend.
child.
Yeah, sure.
Because what I just thought about when you said that was, when you were gone, Lily said, "Daddy doesn't leave me notes anymore." And I was like, "Well, he's not here to leave you a note."
Mhm.
And she asked me yesterday, she said, "Well, he's back." And I forgot to tell you this. He's back and he didn't leave me a note. And I was like, okay. But then this morning, she was very diligent that you gave her that like gratitude rock.
Mhm.
And she was like, I need to go put this in my jewelry box
Mhm.
before school because I need to make sure it's safe. But she asked me, she said, will you put a note in my lunchbox?
Mm.
So I found some sticky notes. I put a note in her lunchbox, and she's like, "I'm gonna have Mrs. DeChico and Mrs. M read it." But I just wrote like, "I love you," kept it super simple,
Mhm.
right? And like did a heart for love so she can read it herself,
Mhm. That's
right?
good.
But the reason I say that is like sometimes it's these really freaking simple things that like you stop doing that are actually missed. It's not that you're not doing those things. It's just like there's things that you're doing that matter, but they don't necessarily they're not big gestures, so they don't feel like it. Like mine was one of our first things, remember, was saying is like, I really like that you have to do is press the button on the coffee machine. And that's like, oh, he actually thought that maybe I would want a cup of coffee in the morning,
Mhm.
which I'm gonna get up and do anyways. But it's like just when you do that, it's just like it signifies to me that you had that 1 second where you said, "Let me think about my wife, not just getting myself out the door."
Mhm.
So little things, like I'm not talking huge gestures. And that's how I read that is like it's little things, not necessarily big things that
Yeah.
need to happen.
Well, I think it's like anything, like, that situation doesn't show up overnight,
Right.
right? Yeah, I think I mean, it's very complicated. Like, hey, your wife isn't, who you want her to be, and it's not her fault, it's your fault.
Mhm.
And in a lot of cases, yeah, it is your fault, but then, you know, in a lot of cases, if you the only thing you have control over is yourself, right? You don't have control over the other person. In fact, if you try to control the other person, that will blow up in your face, right? If you're like telling your wife to lose weight, that's not going to go well, right? You're
Mhm.
telling your wife, hey, I really want you to touch and fuck me more, like
Mhm.
probably not going to happen, right? If you try to control someone else's behavior, but which is weird. It's psychologically difficult to realize that this is the way it works. Like if you start to lead and start to show the other person you're putting in effort, then they're going to want to equally put in the effort,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
It's a basically like I read that as like this is cause and effect in like real terms, right? Is like you can be at cause and it's not your responsibility. Like it's your like you said at the beginning, it takes two, right? So like, each person has to own their part. And I think one of the big things that stood out, the one of the lines that really stood out for me was like, does she walk around like her soul's evicted? And I think about this like so much, but how that was worded really stood out to me because I was like, every single one of person listening right now can probably think of about a person that they're like, that person's just like soul is crushed or it's missing. Maybe not like for a long term, but I think for a season, right? And people can see that when that's happening. And that's like, if other people that don't know that person can see it, then how can the person that they're in a relationship with not see it?
Mhm.
And it's not that the other person in the relationship's responsibility to reintegrate and invigorate that soul, but it is your responsibility to build awareness of like, hey, when something's missing. And I think that this is something that's a lot of women struggle with is like losing their identity in their relationship. And I know I've gone through cycles of this where it's like I've lost myself and like I get super frustrated with myself, but I don't know how to articulate that to you. And I don't know how to sometimes ask for like, hey, you know what would be awesome if you just thought about me by making me a cup of coffee. Like it took me a long time to even get to that point. Right. So um I think for you is like my question is like for the men is like, what are some ways that they can start to lead in their relationship? Like, what are some of the things you did when we really, and the story, the way that I like to share it is like, we talked about how like the metaphor of like having a sword and a shield, right? And we talked about how a lot of, and this was like through therapy, a lot of our own conversations where, for years, I was like the one holding the shield. Like I was protecting us from,
Yeah.
the IRS that you always like to say that one. IRS, like I was taking care of everything on a financial level on our house, and our investments and our insurance and like all of these things. and you were kind of in the dark about it. Still this is like a work in progress of like always like figuring out like what's the next way we communicate about this better. So, like how did you get me to kind of put down my shield enough to trust you that we could, make strides together where I let you get back into more of a leadership role in our marriage and I actually got to fucking rest on some things.
Well, I think that's tough to answer. Like there wasn't like I don't know if there was one pivotal moment, but I mean it all just comes down to just realizing that you have to take responsibility for the results that you have in your marriage, right? You could if you continue to blame the other person for like whatever it is, like your financial situation, your sexual relationship, your the way that your kids act, whatever it is, if you're not taking responsibility in that role, then what you're doing is you're placing blame on the other person. And if that is how you're going to operate, then that's never going to lead to a
Mhm.
healthy relationship, a healthy marriage. So it just started with taking responsibility and understanding that, oh my God, my wife taking leadership in, and it just naturally sorted itself out, right? Starting and operating a business together. It was kind of like, you do this duty and I do this duty.
Mhm.
Go. And like in a lot of cases, like the things that didn't get done just fell on you. And the things that ended up falling on you was always like when it came down to like paying bills, figuring out how we're going to borrow money, pay back money, refinance, where we're going to spend the money, all that kind of stuff. So I think that in a marriage, I think naturally there has to be some leadership by the man when it comes to production and finance. I mean, I don't care what people say about this. I think that the dynamic in a relationship, if it's uneven when it comes to the money situation, I think that causes like resentment. It causes
Mm.
rifts. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the guy has to make more money than the woman or whatever. There just has to be like agreements that, there's oh, Lily's coming. There has to be agreements that you're both on the same team. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Um,
And clear communication
yeah,
on it.
exactly. Hey, Lo.
Hey, Bells.
What's up, dude?
You want to come be our guest?
Yeah, that's gonna work out real good. I think the game-changing conversations that we had when it came to money, it just came down to me realizing that by not leading when it came to, like, the vision of what we were doing with our money, how we were making the money, how we were paying bills with the money, all that kinda stuff, like, just letting you handle it, there was just, like, unspoken resentment there. So until, like, we got together and was like, okay, well, I can do these things, but you have to understand what I'm doing and what it takes to do these things. Right. And we have to have like a shared vision and goal together when it came to money.
So, Ryan, what are some of the ways that you feel like you really helped us shift into you taking more of a lead in our marriage so that I could get a
Yeah.
break?
So I think that this is going to be different for every marriage dynamic. Some relationships are going to be more naturally where the guy, the male is leading. I think naturally a woman is looking for a man to lead, and that sounds like 21st century sort of like, um, what's the word? Like, uh, chauvinist or
Yeah.
whatnot,
Mhm.
right? But it really isn't when it comes to like naturally at our core, like who we are and how we operate and the polarity of men and women. Like a guy needs to step up and lead when it comes to his family. Okay. Now there's whatever faith, family, fitness, and fun, if you will. So I was talking about money. So I think when it comes to finances, again, it doesn't matter who makes more money, the man or the woman. If you're in business together, obviously you're making money together. But when it comes to the money specifically, like there has to be a team dynamic and agreements, right? Expectations and agreements, and there has to be like leadership and production from the man. Like, how sexy would I be to you if I just like worked off the system, laid on the couch, and like expected you to produce? Like,
You wouldn't be my husband.
exactly. And similarly, if I was like putting in all this effort to produce and to protect my family, and you just went and like spent all the money and control all the money, then like I wouldn't feel good about that arrangement either. So the ways that I noticed how that showed up in our marriage. You gave the analogy of like you holding the shield. So in other words, like I let you like take the brunt of battling the IRS. I let you figure out how we were going to pay off times that we got sued. I let you figure out like, hey, here's what we're going to pay our employees. I let you figure out like, hey, this is what we need to grow in order for us to be able to hire another employee. Like I had to step up when it came to the metrics and the money in the business, right? And like that never came to me naturally. So I had to learn how to do that. And I just noticed after a while, it's like, oh my God, like I'm such a pussy when it comes to money because it was something that I never like I was not scared of, but I had like trauma uh because of money growing up. So it wasn't something that I was comfortable with when it came to like, what to do with money, how to protect money, how to like invest money and all that kind of stuff. And you had more of a knack and more of an understanding of it than I did. So, but it just was a
It
call
was
to
more
me.
I fucked up enough things that I learned the hard way.
Yeah, but it was a call to me to like, hey, like step up and learn and like figure out how to, you know, how to take leadership in our money. And it's like that's not the only answer, right? So figuring out how to step up and take leadership in our marriage dynamic, right? So that's planning date nights. That's
Just planning anything, not even
yeah,
date nights, like
planning
planning a
vacation, planning date nights, and just doing acts of service that made you feel important, right? When it came to like with Lily, making sure that I prioritize time with her, taking time where it's just her and I and freeing you up. Um, and when it comes to like whether it's, you know, uh, the what would you call it? Our spirituality, our faith, and our vision for our life, like open conversations and have ideas and, feel like, I'm leading us to a place that's bigger and better and is fun and it's going to be okay. You're just looking for like safety and security. Like your wife is never going to feel safe, as I'm speaking as the man, if there's uncertainty when it comes to money all the time.
mhm.
Your wife isn't going to feel safe if there's like uncertainty about the emotional dynamic of the house, if there's always fighting and yelling. There's never going to be like safety and security if you're, um, getting fat and lazy and out of shape and,
Mhm.
not necessarily like looking unattractive, but it's like, my God, like my husband can't even like walk up a flight of stairs without being winded. Like, I don't know about you, but
Oh my god, that's like a wicked I look at that one, can I just digress on this one because this one
well, I'm just explaining how you can take like, how do you
take
prevent that
ownership, yeah.
situation? Well, you take care of your body and your fitness, you take care of your like, your finances, you take care of your, family, like, you give a shit, and you participate in, like, a grander vision, for your life, right?
Yeah, and it's like, I look at that like the man that doesn't physically take care of himself, and I'm not talking they need to be like an Adonis, right? Like, like 12 pack, and I'm talking about like
No, you like the dad bod better?
no, I definitely don't like the dad bod.
Oh, no, you're not like most of
Yeah,
America
and
supposedly likes dad bods better than fit dads?
that's bullshit, we know that. And, but the reason that I say that part is that, like, it's like sometimes this, like, hits me sometimes when I'm at the gym, like, I'll see, a bigger guy or whatever, like, struggling to make it up the stairs,
Or at least
and,
he's at
like,
the gym.
and I'm like, I look at that effort, I'm like, at least he's showing up
Mhm.
because I was like, "Dude, if I was your wife, it wouldn't even like, as a female, the first I don't think about the sexual thing first. I think about the
I do.
can you be consistent even in your own body? Because then I know you have a greater chance of being there, right? Because if you don't physically take care of yourself, like
Yeah, that's
there is
uncertainty of, like, are
uncertainty,
are you gonna die?
yeah, and you're gonna leave your woman whatever situation that they are in. And it's like, I think that's some of my own trauma, how it shows up, and which is why I became very controlling with our money because I was like, I want to know what everything is and how everything works and that sort of thing because of how I saw it happen in my childhood. when my dad died. But the reason I bring that is that it's an unconscious thing
Yeah.
of, like, even watching like, if a man can't be consistent with their physical body, and like I said, I'm not talking about, like, you being a marathon runner or whatever. I'm talking about, like, show up for 20 minutes in the gym and put in an effort for 20 minutes just to be consistent. That sends a different message unconsciously to your significant other.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really good advice of just like across those domains is like, what is the effort you're putting in across those domains? And here's the thing, I'm a big believer in like, you can have it all. Sometimes you can't have it all at the same time. Like you can't have if you have four burners, what was the one you just said? Fitness, family, faith, and fun, or finance, right? If you have four burners and they are on full tilt, full gas all the time, something's going to burn, right? Like, so, but like, I think if you slowly turn the temperature up on like one element or the other, you can start to get a more consistent flame that leads to a consistent result.
Mhm.
And I think that for a lot of marriages is like they think it's like, "Oh, I'll turn up the heat on our sex life. That'll be the thing that makes it all better. I'll turn up the heat, I'll just make more money on our finances." And but it's like but then you're ignoring these other burners that just like are not even like lit.
Mhm.
And so you have to figure out, male or female, how are you going to be consistent across those domains? And it's not big, extravagant gestures. It's more small, simple, consistent things that add up over time.
So I told you about like what I did in order to like lead as the man. So this whole podcast is all around that question of what are the ways that a woman can let her man lead?
Well, first off, I think that you have to get really centered and clear with yourself of like, hey, what's the type of marriage? What does marriage mean to you? Like what does a awesome marriage look like?
Mhm.
At the beginning, like when we first started working with Steven, our therapist, like that was our first session, remember? He's like, "How do you define marriage?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh my god, I've never been asked that question before. I really don't have a definition," I found out. And so over time, I started to do that. So I think it's getting clear on like, what do you want for your marriage? But most of all, it's like, it starts with also getting right with what you want for yourself. Like, I don't want to be bitchy. I don't want to be overweight. I don't want, those are things that I don't want. But then it makes you have to ask the question of like, what do you want?
Mhm.
Okay, I want to be mobile for my kids. I want to be sexy for my husband. I want to do these other things that might be tied to other people, but fundamentally, it's like you're the winner when you start to take some responsibility for yourself, which means like, hey, I have to go to work out consistently. And I think I've used this example with taxes before, and it's kind of weird to bring this up this way, but like I always think about like when I'm at the gym, it's like I don't have to work out. I get to.
Yeah, but you're not telling me like what are you doing to let your man lead?
And well, that's what I'm saying is getting
What?
clear on like, first of all, like what I want. And then also getting clear on like what I'm good at and what I'm not good at.
Mhm.
And I think, like, some of the where we made a lot of strides was when I started to get clear of, like, "Dude, Ryan, I really suck at this, and you're trying to have me do this." And I think about one couple specifically that are friends of ours, and the wife talked about how, like, when they were losing everything, she was in charge of paying the bills.
Mhm.
And he was like, "I'm just working so hard so we don't lose everything," and she was, like, selling his triathlon bike. And she's like, "Here we are doing fucking triathlons, but we can't fucking pay our mortgage."
Mhm.
And she talked about how she went into this thing where she just took charge. She became take charge Charlie, and about the way that she started to let him lead again was admitting that she didn't fucking feel like she was equipped to actually pay all the bills. Because the truth was, not only did she not have the money to pay him, but she wasn't like paying him on time. She didn't know how to do that. And then so finally she confided in him. And I think that one of the shifts for me was that I started to say, like, even in the I'll take the business as an example because that's where I started. Was I was like, hey, I don't want to do this part anymore by
Mhm.
myself. And in the past, like, if you asked for something, you were like, "Hey, let's go spend 50,000 on this." I'd be like, "Ryan asked for it. I'll give it to him." And I would not ask more, like, questions and, like, be more, um, I don't wanna say confrontational, but I wouldn't ask you more for, like, more details. I would just, like, I'm ready, like, fire, and then aim. That's my personality. And you started to realize that, like, there were some things that I really struggled with. Like, one of the things that I really struggled and came really clear with this last couple of years is, like, as I started to transition out of the business day to day and more into at home, where I still work in the practice, but I am working from home and then being at home with Lily more time, what came up for me was, like, how hard I struggle with really daily routine stuff. Like, I get really friggin' bored, and, like, things like when you would come home and there'd still be dishes in the sink and you'd be like, "Why is there such like, why does this place look like a bomb went off?" But you had no idea what had to happen for me to, like, make sure that that sink was clean. And,
So how do you let your man lead? You still haven't answered the question.
I'm telling you, you get clear on what you want.
Okay.
You get clear what you want on as your marriage.
Mhm.
That's I'd answer those 2 things.
Okay.
And then I think that you have to start to communicate on, like, "Hey, this is something that's hard for me versus this is something I enjoy doing. And here's what has to happen. You have to add behaviors that bring you joy and eliminate and subtract things that do not, so you are a better person to come into your marriage at the end of the day." Because if you go to bed where, like, he's never happy with how I do this, I suck at this, all that kind of stuff, that chatter, that internal battle chatter of negativity literally is going to impact your relationship in so many ways. So I think those are the 3 things I would say is, like, letting your man lead means that you need to actually get clear on what you want as a couple, and then also being clear on what do I need to add to my personal life, and then what do I need to subtract so that I'm showing up as the best version of myself.
Yeah, and that's all to say that the whole game is to try to let you become more your feminine self and less your masculine self, and for the guy to become more his masculine self and less his feminine self.
Yeah, and the woman to be like,
Which the feminine self in a guy is just like passivity, um, you know, being, I think, closed off and non-communicative,
but it's also the, part that lets you
unpredictable.
emotionally connect,
Of course, I'm not saying don't have any of
right?
it,
Like,
but I'm saying there has to be that polarity, right? And you're saying that the way you were able to achieve polarity in our marriage was for you to be more freed up to do the things you'd want to do rather than the things you felt like you had to do.
well, I also think do the things that come more natural to me rather than the things that makes me get into my feminine flow. When I am not like, when I am being forced to do things that, and not forced in a weird way, like, like, forced where it's like, I don't have like, I feel like I don't have a choice because it's like, "Well, he's not gonna do our taxes this year. I have to do them."
Well, and you had to get over stories of like, well, Ryan isn't going to do that, or I have to do it,
Mhm.
or he doesn't know what to do. Right. And that was part of what you had to do was get over the stories of like you telling yourself that I either wasn't going to do it, I didn't know how to do it, or I didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
So, and then again, it comes back to like, well, you have to have a clear communication of, what each other is doing
Yeah.
essentially, especially like we're talking from a perspective of running a business together, but even two
But
people
running a household
running a household,
is
yeah,
like, like, if someone like, for me, like, I don't I suck at doing dishes. Like, I suck at that, right? When I cook, I'm a really good cook, but it looks like a bomb went off in the kitchen, right? And Ryan, like, this is a funny example. He'll be like, "Why can't you clean as you go?
right.
Like, why is that hard for
Why?
you?" And then finally, I just admitted, "It's fucking hard for me." Right? So now we have more of division of labor. Like, we alternate who cooks what night, and you always are cleanup crew, and I'm the cooking side of it, right? Um, I'm the planning side of it because that comes way more naturally to me than it does for you.
Well, not just
Um,
that, is you enjoy doing that.
yes, and that's what I'm saying is that coming down to like, hey, what are the things that more, and I'm not saying that you need to only do things that you're naturally good at. That's not what I'm saying. Don't like get that misconstrued. But what I'm saying is that you need to start to know yourself enough of like, hey, this is a challenge for me. I need to do less of this so that I can be more of who I am naturally in my feminine flow, rather than picking up the shield and being like, I'll get this one out.
Mhm.
I'll do this by myself. I just had a call today where I talked about it was a some tax call, and I was telling the guy about how he's like, "How did you learn all this?" And I said, "Well, like if you want the honest story, I was like, we got audited by the IRS, and that's how I learned a lot of this stuff."
Mhm.
And he was like, "Really?" And he's like, "Oh," he's like, "Well, who helped you like get through that?" And I was like, "0,
Mhm.
no one." Like he's like, "You didn't hire anyone to help you?" And I was like, "Nope, because I didn't know that was a thing." Right? And I was like, and that was that was an example you always bring up because I think about that as like that was when I gutted it out. Like that was my main operation mode was is like, I'll get through this. I'll struggle through this, but I'll learn from it. And while that served me to an extent, when it comes to marriage, that is not a mindset I no
No.
longer
How
want
did
to
that
support.
work how did that work out for our sex life?
Yeah, it was like
Not good.
no. So that's why I'm saying back to like really thinking about like what are the things that I'm naturally good at? What are some of the things I need to add more of? And what are the things I need to subtract out of our relationship? Is like really huge. Like, for example, I thought about it like just even in the context of today prior to doing this podcast. It's like, hey, what are some of the things that we need to add? You know what? You and I just fired about 5 different important topics prior to this podcast that we have not had time to connect about. It's like one of the things we need to add is we need another hour in the week where we actually talk about business stuff that isn't like on the fly.
Mhm.
Right? Because now we're juggling more multiple businesses in different aspects,
Mhm.
right? So it's like that. We also need that for our personal life is like we need a little bit more time because now we're planning quarterly. We're doing much better with that. But like we need to add some more time where it's not like, hey, so we're picking up your dad on Tuesday at 2:30 and now we have 3 appointments we need to move around because and we're doing that on the fly instead of sitting down with each other. You were away last weekend, so it didn't happen. But it's like now we see the result of when that doesn't happen. So it leads to more friction than it does like connection.
Mhm.
So that's something that we need to add. We need to add more time where we can plan together. And then what are some of the things we need to subtract? Well, there's definitely some things I can think about. It's like, hey, we need to stop doing that. Like, one of the things that I thought about is, like, we, like, just, like, randomly buying groceries because we didn't complete the list and the order, because we needed to order from 2 places instead of 1 place,
That you're always
whatever it is.
complaining about that.
Yeah, because it drives me bonkers because it's a simple thing, right? But it's something that keeps coming up recurring, so we need to stop doing that. So it's like I love to say that too, even with my coaching clients. I'll be like, "All right, here what's on your start doing list and what's on your stop doing list?" And it's like if you look at that in your marriage, what am I stop and what am I start? I'll bring it back to the sweatpants. It's like that you stop commenting on, "Hey, you're back in your sweatpants." Might work in your favor, 'cause it did the other night, right? Like, I had my sweatpants on, but we still physically connected.
Mhm.
Because I usually when I'm physically connecting with you, I don't have anything on, hopefully. So,
All right.
anyways,
Well, I think that's a good place to wrap it up.
really?
Yeah. Talk about, ending it with having nothing on. I think I like that. So
Okay.
wrap it up. You're the
No,
closer.
you're
No, you're the closer.
no, you have to practice.
I have to practice. Okay. Well, thank you for listening. I hope you got something out of that whole random rambling about letting your man lead, I suppose. But that turned into more of like, how do you communicate better in marriage? And that ends up in, a better marriage dynamic altogether. So please share this podcast with somebody that you think would benefit. We appreciate any reviews and
Rate, review, and
rate,
subscribe.
review, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next week.